can be a freak for you, for you.
Hey. Una nena como tú, así quería yo, que comiera bien, veo todo, recomendó. Se va a poner contento cuando le enseñé la foto. Me dice, me lindo loco, pero eres un modo. Y que tú te pasas a casa, se ve que arriba en arraso. Quiero llevarte a casa, si de lo guay de la pasa. Y parando toda la noche, pero ten cuidado si me tranca. Tu vida no fue moneta vuelta, pero que has vuelto loca, chica, venga, que me...
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this lunchtime live session. And I am absolutely thrilled to be back. It's been a couple of weeks. My name is Fanny. I'm a certified money coach, and my big goal in life is to open the door to conversation about money, to actually make the conversations we have about our cash normal. Because as I've always said, I believe that we're all a bit weird when it comes to money. And if we can just accept that, then we can work with it rather than against it. I have the most fantastic guest today. I have Michael with me today, all the way from Singapore. And we've got his banner up, the $7 Millionaire. We're going to be finding out all about that. Michael, welcome. It's lovely to meet you and lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me on. And thanks very much for doing this work too. I mean, we're going to talk coming up about all things about financial literacy, but to me, meeting other people that do this is always so interesting and inspiring, because we are bizarrely fighting an uphill battle of teaching the world how to do things that they all should know how to do. So it's always fun to meet someone else fighting the same fight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about that for a minute, I mean, we're both in the world of money, but do you think things are getting better slightly? Do you think more people are talking about money?
I think they are. I think they're not necessarily getting better, though. And the reason I'd say this is because the effects of compounding are so enormous. And we are undoubtedly going to talk about that again. But the effects of compounding are so enormous that people who do the right things and invest pull away from the people who don't. So people get further and further and further behind because of the compounding. And so every generation that gets left out from that gets really further and further left behind. So while things are getting better in terms of there's, social media makes more access. I mean, look at us. I'm in Singapore, you're in my old hometown, and yet we're able to do this, right? With no amazing TV studio and, stuff. So the ability to do that, you're seeing more people communicate ideas about finance as a result. So the ideas are spreading, but it's just the beginning. And it's, I think there's so much more work to do, but we can do it. I think it can be done. Like in a generation, I think it can be done.
What you've just said is really interesting, because when I started this work, I set myself a difficult task. And I said that the people that I want to talk to about money are the people that aren't even hearing Martin Lewis, because he was sort of like the big thing then. 5 years ago, he was coming out onto our telly, he was shouting at us that we need to be getting vouchers and we need to be doing this and need to be doing that. And what I was noticing was that there were a group of people who were so fearful and anxious around money that Martin Lewis really wasn't hitting the spot. And interestingly, over the last 6-8 months, I've been working with housing associations in London and delivering workshops. And actually, the people who I'm talking to, they haven't actually even heard of Martin Lewis. So you're right. There's an absolute big sort of underworld group of people who are sort of hiding away from the money world, and they're the people that I think.
Well, it's all of us. So it needs all of us. It needs all of us in different styles and different ways to be pushing the same sort of simple message. So I completely agree with you. So we'll talk about, I've got the 2 books, and the one book that came out most recently, Happy Ever After, which you've been reading and I hope enjoying. Yeah, that one. That one is the one I wrote that for my daughter 5 years ago, and literally just for her. But I'd already been doing work with migrant workers here in Singapore on a similar subject, but knowing that that was a course, that was coursework, and the thing that was wouldn't work for my daughter. So I had to write it in a different way for my daughter. And then when I'd done that,
why wouldn't it work for your daughter?
because I wanted it to, because the thing that I worked with the migrant workers was very practical. It was towards the thing that became the journal in the end. It was all about enter this spending, target this saving. You can move towards an emergency fund, but a lot of just simple details on moving those steps. I'm going to say simple. They're not easy. They're simple. Different thing. Whereas my daughter, what I wanted her to do is go from really not even knowing what money is, right? Because until you actually think about it, you don't really know what money is. It's just a thing that passes through your hands. And I wanted to understand all the way to financial independence, right? Knowing what her number would be and how she could calculate it, how she could achieve it. So a very big subject, right, of the mission. And that's where, so the different things for different audiences and different voices and different tones and different people saying them. You know, so that's where, you know, I agree with you. I think Martin Lewis isn't speaking to everyone. I'm glad he's doing what he's doing, because he's talking to some people. And, you know, if I ever need to know anything about British stuff, I go there first.
Of course you do, yeah, of course.
You go there first.
Yeah.
But there's so many other things that need different voices and different styles and different tones. And so the book, the Happy Ever After book, in some ways, the reason it took 5 years to get published was because for me, it doesn't solve a big problem. It solves people who are going to bookshops and are already sort of finishing school and are already reading. They're a problem that they don't know finance and they haven't been taught it yet, but they're not the big problem. There's other problems like migrant workers, like, you know, people in housing associations in London. There's those other problems that are potentially bigger and more solvable. So that's where I think that's where social media will be fascinating, because I think it can actually solve that, bringing different voices to different markets, and finding those solutions.
And one thing for me as well is to make it fun. To just get a bit of a lighter tone on it, because so many, even coaches, I think, and financial advisors and people in the financial services industry and teachers at school, it's like, it's all so serious. But it's, you know, my first experience of money, as it were, I used to live on the Isle of Wight, and we lived next door to a junkyard. It was an amazing place. And we used to set up these trestle tables, my sister and the kids from the junkyard, and we used to play shops, but we used to do it with berries. So it was just learning about the value of things and just, you know, I mean, admittedly, when you wanted to, you could have your own quantitative easing. You could just go and pluck your own berries and top your tin up when maybe
obviously.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just starting and being playful like that. But I've noticed that even in schools, I mean, I talked to my daughter's school about, look, you know, you have these bake-offs every month, whatever, and we all have to come and do these baking with our kids. Why don't you make it into a fully fledged project? Why don't you do market research, have a marketing manager, have a, you know, and all this kind of stuff, and see what cost out the results and the cost out the ingredients and how it works. So, okay, so we're on the same page then as far as getting the financial literacy started. And before we went live today, we talked about getting financial literacy properly into schools. And you put your finger up and you had a big but. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you feel about that? Because I think that's really important.
Well, because I worry that if we if we could achieve the impossible, let's say we could find a government somewhere in the world who would just agree and say, yeah, you know, we're going to teach financial literacy in schools. And some countries are doing it already. I think Australia does it, and about 5 or 6 states in the US do it. But most places don't. It's sort of ad hoc everywhere. And the thing that worries me is we've all done O-levels, we've all done university, you know, A-levels, whatever. We've been through school, and we know that most of the time we're being taught pointless things. You know, things you just, it's, yeah, right? Wasn't that good? You could hear the pause there as I thought of the polite word. But it's just a question for an exam.
Yes.
And that's the way school is structured. And there's a lot of big problems with school around that school is designed to do 2 things and nothing can do 2 things. It's designed to teach kids, and it's also designed to have exams at the end, which finds out which are the smartest kids. which means that you don't teach kids properly because you're just finding out which are the smartest, because then you're teaching to the exam.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible thing for teachers because teachers go in wanting to teach kids and then end up having to teach the exam. And I'm not an educator. It's not an area in which I'm an expert, so I could be told I'm wrong about that, but that's the result. And what I would hate to see is financial literacy, which is genuinely practical, then be taught in a way where they're learning how to calculate an ETF structure when they don't need to. You know, just because it's a great question to have on the exam to get an A. To get an A, you have to be able to calculate whether an ETF is structured correctly. No one needs to know this, right? Or any other similar kind of esoteric question that just helps you get an A. Because the stuff you need to know for financial literacy is just so simple that it might not deserve schooling. The problem is that doesn't mean it shouldn't be in school. So I want to make sure that us, people like you, people like me, people like Martin Lewis, and all the people that are involved in financial literacy essentially do it on the side so well that schools can see what they have to copy. And it becomes very obvious that it becomes that. I don't think we can do it all on our own as parents. I don't think when people say it should be taught at home, I think it should be.
Yes.
But we can't replace schools. Otherwise, none of us could read and write.
But this is where we get into the area of the psychology of it, because Martin, Martin Lewis has written a book for schools. He did it through the Young Enterprise. I don't know if you know about that, but he wrote
I knew he had, yeah.
It's brilliant, and it is a really good book, to be fair. And I actually have it by my bed upstairs, and it looks great. It looks a bit like a glossy magazine. It's got colours in it. It's got little tests in it, and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't have anything to do with how we think and feel.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. So, and when I did my interview with Ren, my daughter, on the session of this, I said, what do you remember being taught about practical finance? I like to call it practical finance. I think that's a good, calls a spade a spade. And she said she remembers doing something like, well, would you buy that tin of paint or that tin of paint? If that one was £5 and it was 5 litres, and that one was £3 and it was 2.5 litres, which one are you going to get best value for money for? It's a start, but it's not really there, is it? So it has to be done. And also, when you say it can be down to parents, there are many parents who are totally fearful of money as well. Around that.
So that's why I think we have to work on our side to really establish and show that we're teaching kids, young people, or any group of people, really, really the way it's supposed to be taught. So I don't know if you've seen this. The Financial Times is starting a financial literacy initiative. It's the first charity they've ever structured. In their 150-year history, they've set up a foundation to teach financial literacy. And I am on the phone with them all the time saying, don't miss out psychology, because finance is entirely psychology. I have a terrible joke that I keep repeating on the internet, which is that, finance is 1% numeracy, 98% psychology, and 1% not caring that it doesn't add up straight away. Terrible joke. But that is exactly what it is. It's not. It's so important to get the psychology right, and not just the psychology of talking to people about the psychology, but also understanding how to present the things in the correct psychological way. Because if you give the world's most boring maths teacher the subject on personal finance, and he just gets the whiteboard and just draws a lot of equations on there, no one is going to hear, right? And they don't even need to know the equations. They just need to know the simple steps.
Well, there was a CIPD report done, I think it was actually back in 2017, but it's quite clear that it says in there that when people want to hear about finances, they want to hear about it not from a professional. They want to hear about it from somebody who is like them.
Yeah.
Like somebody that they can trust and that they can see as a pal, really, somebody that they can actually get advice from. And I think, many money coaches like us, I know there are a lot more coming into it now from financial services, but one of the reasons I went into money coaching is because people were saying to me, Fanny, can you help me sort my money out? You seem to be doing all right. Can you give it a go? Let's move over to the book for a minute and the $7 Millionaire, because it's a fascinating title. Do you want to explain to us? I think people go, well, what is this $7 Millionaire? So tell us
Okay.
about that.
So I'll start there, because actually one of the reasons you just hinted at, one of the reasons why I keep my name out of it is because if I put my name on it, I have to say what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I'm a fund manager in a very specialist fund. So am I the person across the table in most places? No, I'm not. I'm not relatable from what I do for a living. So I don't talk about what I do for a living in any of this stuff. But the $7 Millionaire is just, as I said earlier on, sounds a little bit like a wrestler. It's like, it's the idea is there's actually an equation hidden in that pseudonym, and that is, and it came from just a conversation with my daughter. I was working through the idea of two ideas with her. One was compounding and how quickly it can grow, and then secondly also how, and it's in the same conversation in that section of the book we were going through of that the freedom formula, as I call it in the book, or the 4% rule, as it's known other places, just 25 times your spending. I'm going to talk about why I have it the other way around. But she said, okay, so what if I decide I need $1 million? How long will it take me to, what's the smallest amount of money I need to save every day to have $1 million in the bank by the time I retire? And so she said smallest. So I was like, okay, we assume a full career and daily savings and a reasonable return of, say, 7% on investing in markets. And so spreadsheet, split second later, I'm back $7. And I checked that because I looked at that, so that seems way too small. It's such a small number. That's $50 a week. It's $2,500 a year. That is achievable by so many people. And I saw a light go on behind her eyes when I said that. She's like, seriously, $7? And all of a sudden it sort of brings it down. And we don't want to go there. None of us want to go to the latte thing about if millennials would just stop having their coffees, they'd all be billionaires, because we know that's not true. But it does sort of bring it into that territory.
It does.
Really just start. It's not about the latte. It's just about understanding I need to save that bit of money. And I don't agree with the whole latte thing, because I don't think you save by stopping spending. I think you save before you spend. You put the money away first.
Warren Buffett, pay yourself first, right?
Pay yourself first. In our book, and we say, saving comes before spending in our book and in the dictionary and in life.
I love that.
Yeah, it's very important to do it. So I saw immediately, she said, bing, I could do that. And I suddenly thought, I'd never thought as a kid that I could be a millionaire. I didn't know, no one had told me the maths. I didn't think it would be possible. And then I see in her eyes, she'd obviously never thought about it either. No. That it could happen to her. And she said, I could do that. That was just purely inspirational. And I thought, if I can just leave that $7 millionaire, if you could be a $7 millionaire, why not? And that became the pseudonym I started using for everything after that. Because what's great, I mean, you've got a formula. Yeah. 2, you've got an aspirational dream of being a millionaire. But 3, you've got the first step. Today, $7 or pounds or rupiah or yen or whatever it is you want to be a millionaire in. Yeah. Just 7 a day. And the first day, put 7 away. And that's you on the path.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said to people, oh, I can't afford to save. I say, pick up a cup, anything, and open your wallet and put a penny in it. Just a penny, anything, pound, 20p, 10p, and put a sticker on the side of it, put savings, and you started. Yeah. But there's this big psychological barrier, isn't there? I can't afford to save. I can't. Yeah. And it's that first thing. And again, it's like you with the $7. It's just breaking through that myth. It's a myth, isn't it? It's a myth.
I think there are undoubtedly people on too little money to be able to save. We know that. Yeah. But from my perspective, I was like, one, learn, because hopefully that doesn't stay the case forever. 2, like you said, are you really going to miss a penny, 2p, 20p, a pound? Develop the habit. Develop the habits of doing it first, right? Because then when you have more money, you already have the habit and you'll like the habit and you'll want to boost it more than you're boosting your spending. And so that's where it's like the information then becomes as important. I don't want to say you never want to contest someone and say, yes, you do, because you'll just get into a battle with them. I don't know. You might like doing it. I don't like doing it.
What? So say yes, you do to what?
So yes, you do have money to save. You know,
Oh,
use
yeah,
your
no,
backward
they
saving.
have to decide. They have to decide that. But I
Yeah.
probably would argue that they could save 1p.
Yeah. Right.
And that you
No.
are essentially a saver.
Yeah.
Do you know, I tell you something that I find quite interesting, though, which and is something that I do try to get people out of. And I'd be interested to hear your point of view on it. What do you think of these roundup apps? You know, the ones when you go into a shop and let's say you spend £3 silly 60 on a hot chocolate, and then the app will round it up to 40p and put that 40p either into a little savings account or even now into an investment with reasonably high fees. My personal opinion on it is, I know you're sort of saying that you're doing it, it just happens and I don't know about it, Fanny, so I don't feel it. And I go, well, how much have you actually got now saved? And I've got a couple of £100. And I said, but how would it feel if you actually did the same, but on purpose?
Yeah.
Doesn't it psychologically sit better with people? I find that very strange.
I don't mind it. I just don't think it's saving. Like I said, saving starts at the beginning of the month. Everything else is you save at the beginning of the month. You set it into your budget, and that is your saving in your budget at the beginning of the month. Everything you've got left at the end of the month that you haven't spent isn't savings. That's accidentally not spent. That's a very, very different thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. It's an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, it's you need to have it in that budget right at the very beginning, and then it will probably be. Now, I don't mind the mop up, sweep up, whatever they call them. I think they're fine. A little bit of extra, but it has to be extra. You have to set the budget at the beginning of the month. I'm saving this month. It's all,
agree.
Yeah, it's intentionality.
I have something called a money map. So, and I work on the premise, give every pound a purpose. So we start off and I want people to map out their money like they're going on a financial adventure. So we have a map, first of all, where every single pound is given a purpose. So that includes debts, it includes savings, it includes Christmas, it includes birthdays, it includes absolutely everything. So we smooth cash flow and it's all mapped out. And then obviously we need a tracker, some kind of compass to make sure that we're keeping on track. And then I focus very much on feeling fit and motivated, because if we're going to go on a financial adventure, we need to be ready for it psychologically. And then of course we have to think about can't say the word, a destination.
Yeah, right.
So some kind of goal. Yeah.
No wonder you like mission so much. Yeah.
Look, I've got it here, right? Let me tell people what it is because it's so good. So, what do they call these things? They called a
that's an acronym.
That's the thing. So,
or an acrostic, potentially acronym or an acrostic in that case.
I haven't heard of that.
I know, right? I know. Yeah. So
the mission, MISSION acronym, and it works like this, which is brilliant. So, where's the page? Here we go. So, 1, money. Money is time and energy. Learn how to think about it properly. 2, income. We know what that is. 3, saving. Comes before spending. 4, spending. 5, investing. 6, owning. And the 7 one for me is the best. Now. Yeah. Now. Just do it now. No other time, right? Now. No other time. But also, so importantly, because by that point, we've already talked about compounding. We talk about compounding in investing, and then we talk about it in owning, but then now, right? Because every year costs you so much money. I mean, I remember one point calculating on the $7 Millionaire analysis, delaying that by a year. Oh, no. Yeah. $80,000. The first year, delaying for a year costs you $80,000. Astounding, right? Yeah, it's scary, really scary. So look, we've established that you're great with money, right? But we weren't all made this way. So how did you learn? I'm going to give you 2 time periods so I think explain reasonably well. I mentioned to you earlier, my hometown is where you are right now. Yeah. Where there is the world's best jumps racetrack. Yeah. We can tell it's Cheltenham. It's Cheltenham. The Cheltenham Gold Cup. Hey, I've never been.
And I've been, but I've never been in the posh bit because my granddad used to be on the track, like helping on the track.
Excellent.
And he would take me down, and then we'd go and watch the gambling because he was a gambler,
Right.
and he was a hopeless gambler. And he would gamble all his money away. He would gamble or drink all his money away.
Okay.
And we would have no money. So I was raised by my grandparents in Cheltenham, and we'd have no money if my grandmother hadn't saved. My grandmother basically saved. She put money away every single month. And that's how we had any money ever, was she hid it from my granddad because otherwise he'd have gambled it. And I had no interest in that. Bizarrely didn't form an interest in becoming a gambler. But then I worked as a journalist and a writer for years, and then was basically offered a job to be half editor, half analyst in an investment bank in Indonesia. And so I got that job, and I thought I'd get 2 months to learn about finance because I didn't know anything. And they said, start on Monday. We need you on Monday. And I was basically a weekend. I was like buying every book in the bookshop on like Saturday morning and just trying to read through it all.
What books?
I was overload.
What books? What was the first book you bought?
I remember it's called Pocketbook MBA. That's the one I remember. And then I remember I also bought The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham. Never finished it.
No, it's not supposed to be an easy read.
No, never finished it. Got a few pages in at best. And then, but then also reading a lot of the Warren Buffett way and all that kind of stuff. Right. But what I realized after about a month was two really important things. So one, I hadn't learned anything that hard. I really thought there was supposed to be tons and tons of difficult stuff to learn, but I sort of was motivated to do it, and it hadn't been very difficult. Okay. And I'd learned more at the racetrack as an 8-year-old than I had in that sort of month. Really? Oh yeah, I mean, I remember the first time someone in finance talked to me about arbitrage, and they tried to make it super complicated. I was like, they're laying the book away. All they're doing is laying the book away, because I'd watched these people lay books away as a kid.
I read on arbitrage in the book this morning because I thought arbitrage was really complicated.
It's just laying the book away. That's it. I mean, it's not easy to do. I'm not going to say I can do it, but when it's explained and you're having that conversation, every bookies in the world is arbitraging everything all the time. So that's one thing. There's nothing that was, and I wasn't doing anything that complicated. So nothing was complicated about what I'd learned. But what I also started to realize was unbelievably important. Then I said, how have I not been taught this before? How was this subject, I was 28 at the time. Right. How has it taken 28 years for me to learn any of this stuff? Because I had debts, I was still spending everything.
When you were, what kind of things were you learning? Were you learning about markets then, or were you learning about budgeting? That you were going straight into the proper markets and all that kind of stuff? Yeah,
I was as an analyst, analyzing companies, telling people what they were worth, all of that kind of stuff, fundamental analysis. But it's very detailed, but nothing very complicated. Really? There's nothing particularly.
That inspires me actually, because I'm never, I said to you before, I didn't even get an O-level GCSE maths. I didn't even pass my basic, which is nothing to be proud of, but I am sort of quite proud of it because I've got to where I am. But I look at all those figures on, say, Yahoo Finance. You go and look at all, you sort of look at it and go, okay. So again, we all have our own level of block, right?
But yeah, exactly. But the problem is you're looking at them all in one go. If I do that, if I look at them all in one go, it's just too much. But what I did steadily over time was I learned what that one means, what that one means, what that one means. I now know what they all mean, and I can do it in one swoop, right? But one at a time, I had to go back and really, really understand what each one means. Yeah. None of them are particularly complicated. I mean, there's nothing more complicated than division, right? I mean, PE is price over earnings, right? Yeah. It's really the reverse of a yield, right? So if you get a 4% yield on your property, it's a 25 times PE. That's it. It's just the same maths the other way around.
Just the backwards. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, not like this is not rocket science. Very much not rocket science, right? And what I realized was not overly complicated, really valuable. And I said this thing is, it took me 28 years to hear all this and learn all this. And I just started getting angry, really genuinely angry. To this day, the reason I do this is getting rid of that anger. Because, you know, let's say we all watch TV news and we can get angry about something, right? And you never get to do anything about it. And I've got this subject where, you know, it makes me angry that we let kids leave school with the ability to make money for other people, but not the ability to keep it for themselves.
Yeah.
And the ability to keep it for themselves would take a couple of hours of lessons, maybe 4 or 5, not a lot more.
A little
Really
short
simple stuff.
course, a little short course, and make it, you know, just, you can make it so relatable. I mean, they all go and eat at McDonald's. They all have a phone. You know, they all have a share in a company. They're all looking at the S&P 500, for instance, and going, what? You mean if I put a couple of £100 into the S&P 500, I've got a share in all of those companies? Yeah.
And all of a sudden, every CEO in that works for you.
Yeah.
You're in the 500 biggest companies in the world, every CEO, and it works for you. I mean, it's an amazing place to start. And the fact that that costs you, what, 0.1% to invest in that? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. But we're not teaching people that.
No, we're not.
Right.
We're not. So, okay, so if I was to ask you then, because I have this list of questions that I have, which I like to, sometimes one pops out at me on the sheet.
Yeah.
I'd say, what was the best purchase you ever made? Because I'm sort of thinking, I'm asking a bit of a leading question, because I was thinking maybe it would be those books, because that's how you learn about things, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. You think about purchases.
Yeah, I suppose I never think about it, because I probably threw it away after about a month. So, but it wasn't it all went in here. So, you know, maybe it was, but yeah.
You've got a good
books. It's always books, isn't it?
It's always books. It's always books. Do you know, I was horrified. I went into the school, my local school here, because I was the business advisor for the Young Enterprise Scheme, which I absolutely loved working with. I mean, these fantastic, bright individuals at school. And I was looking at the business course books, and one of them, one of the top ones that they study, is one written by Donald Trump.
Very rare. Bankrupted a casino, but he's managed it. I mean, he's run a casino into bankruptcy. I mean, that is a really special level of businessman.
Has he?
Yeah, he bankrupted Trump Atlantic City went bankrupt.
Wow.
I mean, the odds are so against it happening, but he actually managed it.
I mean, really.
Yeah. Oh, I had another answer for you for a second, and now I've forgotten it again.
What, your best book or your best purchase?
Yeah. Damn it, it's gone again. I will come back to it. Come on.
It will come back up. It'll come back up. I noticed that we've got a couple of people who are good to give some likes. Feel free to post some questions if you want to. We're here to answer them.
I've remembered the answer. It's actually a very good one for us.
Yeah.
Because we're in a financial literacy thing. The best purchase I ever made was insurance. I used to own a house in Australia, and it burnt down in a bushfire, and I was fully insured. And I think I was the only person in that whole bushfire that was fully insured.
Wow.
And you know what? That was, because my wife was panicking for about a day because she couldn't find the insurance documents. She thought she hadn't renewed, but she had. And that is the best purchase ever.
Yeah. Have you ever read a book called The Barefoot Investor?
I've seen it. I've read bits of it. I haven't read the whole thing. I've been in touch with him. I'm trying to give him the journal.
Yes, because his house burnt down, so you can possibly talk about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
because that's what happened. His house burnt down. So going back to the book, you talk a lot about saving, and one of the things I love is that you use fairy notes in there. Right? I love all that, and there's the chat between the princess and the frog and all that kind of thing, which is really interesting. What would you say if I was to take the book like this and had 5 minutes to read? Where would you send me to first of all? Where would you say I should go in the book?
The introduction.
The introduction to get you hooked,
to get you hooked, and also because in the introduction we do talk about the freedom formula, which is where I want you to get to, and we introduce it at the beginning. so that you understand where you're going. Like, as you said earlier on, the journey's great, but you also need the destination. And the destination in this is understanding how you can be free of worrying about money, that there is a formula for that and it's not complicated. And if I can get you to that, that's where I get you to.
And the other part of it is as well, is that if you're talking about investing in index funds, and I mean, this might sound silly, but you can actually put in $7 a day now, because it's, you doesn't, if you opened an account with Vanguard or something like that, no, we probably shouldn't mention names, etc. But hey, I just say what I do, and I invested via Vanguard. If you put it in there and you invest you can actually transfer $7 a day. I mean, it might go in as cash first of all, but then as soon as you can just invest it into something when it's, it really is that easy these days.
It's so much easier than it's ever been before. And it's also cheaper. Sometimes people argue with me saying you can't get a 7% return. I say, well, you might want to argue that, but you're no longer paying 3% fees anymore. You're not even paying 2% fees. You could be paying almost invisible fees. You can. But you could be paying 10 basis points, which, that's an amazing. If you're thinking that you could only get 7% returns and you'd lose 2% to fees, not anymore.
No, which is incredible. It's really, really good. Okay, so I'm going to send a little bit of a wild one out there now, because obviously we're talking about kids and we're talking about young people, and young people in my book are extremely switched on and are hungry to learn. And I actually think that when it comes to money, it can be quite a dangerous field for them, because there are lots of people out there saying, start trading, I can get you rich in 3 months. We've also got cryptocurrency around. So it's a big open world, and there are apps and fintech companies popping up absolutely everywhere all day. What are your views on things like that? How should we be approaching that with people?
Well, I think it's eventually one of the reasons why this needs to be in school, to really get the basics, the foundation of how you compound. That you don't need to you don't need to double every year. You don't need to double every month, because if you do, you're engaging in a thing that means you will lose all of it at some point. And the thing is, that if you're in a thing where you make 7% or 10% a year, and the next year it loses 7-10%, you're still at 100%. You're going back up. You've still got your investment stake. Whereas if you're in something which doubles or drops to zero, the moment you're zero, you're out. You're out. You're out of the game.
Yeah.
Right. If you're playing roulette, if you could actually keep your stake all the way through and just be making small gains and losses, you could never be cleared off the table. But the reality is, in roulette, you're out and you're gone. No stake. Leave the room. Right. And that's the biggest danger. That's the danger with these more aggressive trading things, is that people lose everything and that's it. They think that's it, over. I'm never going to invest again. It's gambling. The form of investing they've gone into is gambling. Yes. But that's not investing. I mean, that's just speculating or gambling in a different form. And if they could be taught what compounding does, nice, steady, slow returns, hit those same big numbers very, very quickly, as long as you're investing steadily, it happens much faster than you think. And then the whole nature of a compound return is that it does this, right? It starts out not doing anything and all of a sudden goes up a vertical cliff. If anyone wants to know what compounding does, take a look at coronavirus charts. That'll show you what compounding does.
Yeah.
Right? Doubling every 3.5 days, really, really fast, right? And that's over. If instead of doubling every 3.5 days, you're doubling every 7 years, let's say, on a 10% return, you'll be making really, really good money very quickly. And if you start in your 20s, in your 40s, you'll be looking really good. So that is where I would think that I love all these apps. I love the apps offering these things. I do obviously prefer the ones that I don't like, the ones that offer trading. So the Robinhood stuff is ridiculous. And all the ones that offer debt are really wrong as well. I mean, I do talk to some of these apps and say, you can't be offering debt. Like one of the things we talk about is, like, they talk about with financial inclusion. I was like, yeah, that financial inclusion without financial education is like gun inclusion without gun education. You're just giving people a way of really hurting themselves. And so that's where I think the education is super important on all these apps.
There's an interesting app I've been learning about recently, and what they do is their prime market are retail workers, sort of employees, etc. And I mean, I'm very well aware that before lockdown, the figures have dropped quite considerably, but before lockdown in this country, we were paying £139 million every day in credit card and personal loan interest. Right? It actually in March 20, or I think it's about March this year, it dropped to 124. Ooh, whoopee do. And don't get me wrong, going back to 2012, it was a lot higher. So it has, but it's still a ridiculous amount of money, crazy amount of money.
£2 a day per person.
Yeah, I mean that.
Yeah.
But there's an app that's come out now which I really like, because obviously we've got places like Klarna as well, which is just so dangerous. And for young people, I mean, my daughters think, oh great, I can just pay it over 3 months, and that's great. I go, yeah, it is until it goes wrong, right? But there's a couple of apps, and one particular app that's come out now, which I am a big fan of, is they offer. Should something go wrong, which means it's going to take you over your salary before payday, they're offering up to £300 as a loan, interest-free. They are then working on financially educating people that when they've got some spare cash, they will actually buy some vouchers at face value for the shops that they normally spend in to actually start to encourage saving.
Okay. How do they get paid, this app?
Well, we don't need to go into that bit now, because I'm not all sure on exactly the details. But it's a model that seems to be working.
Yeah, good.
But it's about encouraging people to actually get out and stay out of debt, which I think is has to be the way forward, doesn't it?
It's one of the most important parts of this. I mean, it definitely is. It's because there's that phrase, right? Those who understand compound interest earn it. Those who don't pay it.
Right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And
so we've got a question. We've got a question. So the lovely Dennis Harhalakis is with us. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Dennis. And Dennis has said, what are some of the things that you've learned from teaching migrant workers?
Yeah, really good. I mean, we talked about this earlier on, of it's so important who's giving the message. So one of the things that when I was working with migrant workers, one of the things I tried to do was actually not be involved, because I don't look like them. So the message wouldn't come so well from me. So quite often we do just sort of working groups with them talking to each other about how they're saving money and what they've done recently to save money. And then you get that sort of hive mind of sort of 10 of them sitting down and saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And one of them always had a way of doing something a little bit better than the others. And you just see them making notes. And that was one really crucial thing. The other thing that was in the journal is, I was actually asked for this from the journal, was on the tracking page, when you're tracking your spending.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, said, can you just put a little column in with the words need and want, so I can circle which one it is, so I know during the week, am I buying things I need or am I buying things I want? And
tell us about the journal, because you haven't told us about that yet.
Yeah. So the journal is a product devised for migrant workers. So I was seeing groups teaching migrant workers at weekends basic financial literacy, and I thought one of the problems is they walk out of the room, and when they start spending, we're not there saying, well, we've had this discussion. So I thought, if we can give them something that they take out of the room with them, that they can keep at home, and then they can track regularly, because so much about that, as you said earlier on, not personal finance, but practical finance, like the actual practice of it, week in, week out, day in, day out, is really the most important point. And so to get them to track what they're spending the money on. If we go back to the latte thing, it's not about the latte. It's about being able to look at your spending and going, I'm spending 10% on eating out and I don't care. Or 20%, my granddad, 50% at the racetrack. It's like maybe I could enjoy myself in a different way if I reallocate my budget, and tracking it Only by tracking it, you'll know. If you think you've got an idea in your head, you are wrong.
Yeah.
Right? You only know when you track stuff. So
Yeah.
we made a journal that did that. So we made some tracking, some saving, and some tracking planners and trackers that people could see where they were spending, where they were saving, how they were doing all this thing. And then in between we made it weekly, and then in between there's like a $7 Millionaire secret. So, you know, a lot of sort of psychological stuff, like, you know, baby steps. First steps are baby steps. Don't worry about trying to go all the way to the end. Just take this week as this week. You know, how are you doing? Do you feel you're doing okay? You know, if you are, have a bit of a celebration. If not, think about where you might improve for next week. Write it down here. And a lot of sort of physical activity, because one of the things that we all know, we've learned about finance, is you spend money because retail and advertising has built cortisol in your system. You've got stress in your system, and you can release it by doing an activity. And they try to make that activity spending. They being retail, e-commerce, all these people. It can be anything. You can go for a run. You can do anything. It will release the cortisol.
Yeah.
But they try. But filling in a little app, filling in a tracking thing, filling in I've saved this month, that will release it too. Not quite as well, but just as long term, it will just remove that moment. So making it practical, making it psychological, that's why we developed all these different things into the journal. And there's some segments of the journal in Happy Ever After. We put some of the actual tracking and planning your expenditure into there, so that we could sort of give an example of that. But it's we basically, it's something we have to share with as many people as we can. Yeah, that's it.
I love the little flying piggies. They've got wings, the piggies.
Yeah, they do. They've got there's only one of them in there. Her name is Peggy Pegasus. And yeah.
Okay. It's funny though, isn't it? Because I mean, when I work with clients, and you know, when clients come to me, they know that we're going to be talking about stuff that they find awkward. That's the whole point, really. We're not just sitting down and doing a bookkeeping session. It's not about that. And I always set them a task, especially the spenders, because they have a penchant. Friday night, had an argument with the partner, pour a glass of wine, sit in front of the computer, start surfing, all the ads start popping up, and all of a sudden you're buying things that you don't need. So I did a reverse psychology on it, which was, when that's happening, write down when you don't buy it rather than when you do buy it. And it was incredible how some people would say, do you know, I haven't spent £500 this month, which I would have done. And it's like, oh my goodness. And now, because I'm tracking what I am spending as well, everything seems to be turning upside down. And it was just getting that real, like almost like like the same cortisol, like the same dopamine rush, but because they've got so much money. And so it was then being able to start to establish which feels better, that bit where you're spending there, or this bit when you see what you've not done because it's listed and how it's benefited you at the end of that month.
Well, one of the other things you've done for them is you've done two things. One, you give them the activity that twists the event, but you've also done another thing, and that is that one of the other reasons why not spending builds even more cortisol is because we think it's denial. We're denying ourselves this item, and therefore we're not doing it. But if you give them a target that they're then achieving by not spending, it's a positive move. There's now no denial. So it's an activity, and the activity helps. And they'll sort of be like, oh, if I don't buy this, I'm this much closer to that target that Fanny gave me at the beginning of the month of saving this much money. Great, I'm going to write it down. I didn't buy this, and that moves me towards a target.
There's one step that has to go in between it, though, which is really important, is the fact that when they are just about to buy the £90 cardigan that they don't really like, and they've had half a glass of wine by this point, or maybe 1.5 glasses of wine, there's a list of questions that are put onto their computer going, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Do I really want to do this? And actually psychologically think to go through a little checklist first. So it's a gate. It's putting a gate in the way.
Very good. Yeah? Very good.
And it's the same thing that I used to say to people, that when you go to the supermarket, before, when you get out of your car, if you've gone in your car, and you just take out the cash that you're going to spend and either leave the credit card at home or put it in your shoe. That's a really good place to put it, because the act of actually having to take off your shoe and taking it out is, you don't forget that in the middle of a supermarket, really, do you?
No, that's not happening. No, like that. It's all the things you can do. So one of the other ones, I mean, I talk to some of the migrant workers about is, and other people too, just take a photograph. If you're in a shop and you want something, you think something's really nice, and you're not in front of the computer, take a photograph of it. You just take it and send it to some friends, and then just, talk to them about it for a few days, and you won't want to buy it. Just take a photograph, because you now have had like 50% of the pleasure of this thing. Just taking the photograph of it. It's there. It's in your phone. You've got it. You can look at it later on. And all those kinds of there's so many different mechanisms we can use, and all for different people. One of the ones you're making me think of while you're talking about going to the supermarket was one of the ones that I like to say with my daughter, I encourage her on, is how not spending money is good for the environment. If we're really going to pull back, climate change, just don't spend money, because almost all money you spend is tied to oil or plastic or something that's heating the planet. So pull it back. And all of a sudden, so I can't even help myself. I go to the supermarket, I look for the 50% off shelf, because it does two things. I'm saving food waste, right? I'm saving food waste. I'm saving money. And at the same time, there's a weird selection of stuff that I might not normally choose. And I'm going, oh, hello. And, if there's some stuff that the fruit there is always actually ready to eat, unusually for a supermarket. So that's going in, because I'm going to eat that straight away. So all these things, you just reframe. And there's so many different reasons for doing things.
Interesting, because I was listening to a book recently, which is a brilliant book, actually. It's called Get Rich Lucky Bitch by a lady called Denise Duffield Thomas. She's an Australian lady. And I have to say I loved it. But she talks very much about, she didn't have things when she was a child. And when she got older and she could afford things, she really takes pride in buying really nice things. And I find that a bit fascinating, because I've never really my dad was a make do and mend guy. We used to call him Alan Perfectly Adequate Owen, right? Because he would be the sort of person that would have, and it would be a bit extreme. So, you have a light pull cord. I remember we had a light pull cord and he had 2 knots in it because it had broken twice. I mean, that's going a little bit extreme. But my husband and I, Neil, we like to make things last. And we take massive pride in the fact that we have a rice steamer that I bought in 1986. And we use it at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I cherish that. Whereas most people go, oh my God, that's old, throw it out and get a new one. But it is interesting, isn't it, that if you go to a supermarket and you go to the 50% off thing, if you're feeling that you're denying yourself something, my question would be, why? Why do you feel that?
People do. It's bizarre, and they've all got some hang up from the past that they feel that. For me, I'm so happy to help them not throw stuff away tomorrow. They'll be throwing that away, and so I'm helping the supermarket. I'm helping me. I'm helping the planet. It's like that. So see, I think this is where it's so important to track, right? Because we can all get caught into this trap of I like to give myself good things. I appreciate good things. And we get caught in the trap of actually not really knowing what half the good things are. And unfortunately for my wife, I've spent a while analyzing luxury goods companies, and I know the margin. And you don't want to know, because these are some of the highest margin products on the planet. There's a reason why Louis Vuitton doesn't have a sale. They burn their stuff. They actually burn it in a furnace rather than cut the price. Because if they ever cut the price, you'd realize they're making 95% margins. Right? So so I look at that and go, am I denying myself good things, or am I falling prey to marketing? Which one am I here on this, right? And do I know?
And it takes quite a strong psychological metal. I don't know if you could say that. I mean, METTLE, right? Takes quite a strong metal to withstand the pressure of that. I mean, I've always been a researcher. I'm a Virgo, right? So I look at something and I'm my dad's daughter as well, in the fact that, you know, I look at something, oh, am I going to buy it? And I do all the research and I do it.
Yeah.
And I've had friends say to me over the years, oh, for goodness sake, just buy the bloody thing. And I go, no, because I have to be ready to buy it. And I've constantly been called a geek when it comes to that, or, you know, or tight-fisted or whatever. And you know what? I'm really glad I was now. I really am. But you know, like I said, I interviewed Ren on here a couple of weeks ago, and she's 16, so keen on looking after the planet. And I think a lot of these young people are. She only buys secondhand clothes now, which is great. We're not allowed, we don't have face wipes anymore. We were using those like they went out of fashion. I now have a proper cloth, which she bought me, and I love it, to be honest. We don't have plastic bottles in the bathroom anymore. They're all, you know, they're all refilled or whatever. And we've got shampoo bars
and the thing is, doing that properly can cost a lot less money. So there's often an excuse made that, oh, I can't be that because it's more expensive to buy the organic, or it's more. But you know what? There are cheap ways of doing it too, and you can combine it. And I think that's really useful because, again, it works into the psychology. It's like I'm achieving two things I want to achieve here. I'm moving towards my own financial independence, and I'm helping save the environment. Or it could be another thing. It could be anti-clutter. You want to be a minimalist. You don't want so much stuff in your house. Okay, so you buy less. And so when you're tempted to buy something, you go, you know what? By not having that, I'm going to have a nicer, cleaner shelf. And I'm not spending the money. And all the things that we can do, the reality is we need this because there are 3,000 to 5,000 messages a day that we see telling us to buy stuff. Yeah. And you know, if you don't have that reinforcement to yourself saying, no, I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm doing the right thing. I shouldn't just be spending. I should invest. It's good for the planet. It's good for me. It's good for everything if I do that. We need to have that level of reinforcement to fight back against the 3,000, 5,000 messages. Yeah, absolutely. We should just be changing the world. What are we going to take the world by storm and actually change it all over? Oh, I don't know. So what's next for you? Is there another book? Well, there's another version of the journal coming out in Bangladesh, in Bengali, hopefully soon. I've got a translator not far from you. I've got a translator at the University of Oxford who just yesterday volunteered to translate it for me. So we're translating that because there's a lot of migrant workers that don't read English here. So that we've been working with Filipino migrant workers who do read English. And so we're going to work on the Bangladeshi ones often don't. So, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, and they can really do with a little bit of extra advice because they tend to get ripped off, honestly. So the more advice we can give them, and I know a good NGO who works with them. So there is another book, although I did have, I've got another idea forming for a book, and I don't know if I can do it, which is to do, you've seen the illustrations in the book. I love the illustrations. Yeah. The lady who drew those lives just south of you in Stroud. And partly inspired by Stroud, another resident. Yeah, right? Aren't they lovely? I think they're amazing. They are lovely. They're all done by hand. And partly inspired also by Stroud, of course. The other person, the great artist that lives in Stroud is Kit Williams of Masquerade fame. And I have this desire to maybe do a kids version with her illustrations and maybe some more in there with a bit of a treasure hunt involved. And of course, we have a big treasure hunt in Cheltenham. Do you? Yeah. What's the there's the jeweler, the Beards. Is it Beards? I think it's Beards. Oh, yeah. And they do a diamond hunt every year. Really? Okay. And you can win these like really cool diamonds. It's quite hard. It's not an easy thing. You have to go all around everywhere and all this kind of stuff. But it's all done on a day. Nice. And it's all very exciting. But that sounds lovely. So what's the artist called? I'm trying to find her name. Yeah, her name is Jo Sanders. She's very private. She's very hard to find. I find her hard to find. Okay, well, no, they're lovely illustrations. They really are. It's a lovely book. So what do you want people to do? You want people to buy the book, right? Well, I think if you know someone who's in that teenage bracket and you're thinking about them thinking, I need them to learn about money. And, it's like I need to learn them to learn about money. Do I know it myself well enough to have that conversation? And do I want to have a conversation where the kid just looks back at me bored and I know nothing's going in and having terrible conversations? And that was why I wrote this for my daughter, was to kind of get through that easy, all the really bulk of the information in a book. So it was taken away from me having to bore her with it. And so then she could read it and we could have a conversation about whether she understood it or not and how it got on. If you know someone like that, I wrote it because I couldn't find another one like it that I could find for like a teenage daughter. I don't know whether Ren needs it. She might get it all from you already, but you know, that kind of age, that kind of child, all the way up to, and honestly, of any age, because even when you're a bit older,
Connie's 20 and Connie's working with me now, which is great. So I can feed her any information I want, which is really good, really good. Ren not quite so, but she's quite an avid saver. But yeah, all of these things are good, and it's about just keeping that balance with it as well. And it's about thinking that you don't have to be totally obsessed by money. You just have to know that it's important and know that you're carrying it with you pretty much 24/7, 365 days a year until the day that you pop your clogs, and actually have it as a friend rather than a foe. It's a powerful resource, not a painful problem.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
I have so enjoyed having you with me today. I think we could carry on talking all day, to be honest, but we need to sign off, because if not, people will get like, I don't know, something like mad might happen. The book's available on Amazon, and you've got your website, and the web address is down here on the screen with coming across the bottom. Is there anything else that you want to say?
No, just thank you very much for having me. It's really fun to chat to you. It's always fun to talk to people who are trying to help people with their money, because people want to be helped with their money. You know, they really do. And it just needs more of us to do this and approach it in the right way. And thank you, Dennis, for the question, if you're still around.
Yeah, I think he's still there. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off. We'll say goodbye to everybody. And thank you very much, everybody, for watching. This will be up on YouTube in my YouTube channel soon. Also, just very quickly, just to let you know that the My Money Makeover, my new program, is coming, which is a 10-week program to learn all about how to manage your money with joy, but also to get all of that, your mindset working in the right way with it. It's a group program. There's going to be weekly Zoom calls and a WhatsApp group support, and it's really to hit everybody, for everybody. There's no excuse that if you want to change your money life is now to do it, because the price tag is just £100. So this is really to be inclusive for everyone. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want any more information, let me know. I will be back again soon with actually a lady who called Anka, who came from Romania with 40 quid in her pocket and 3 kids. And she now has a 6-figure business and is really, really doing well and building wealth and working towards becoming financially free. So she's going to be coming up soon as well. So keep an ear out. Thank you again very much, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Take care.